So do I just click? What happens? There we are. So I want to start by telling you a story. A long time ago, right at the start of my career, the design team I was working in got a new boss. This was terrible. He didn't know anything about design. He didn't want to know anything about design. He didn't care to learn anything about design, and he made terrible decisions. And one day, he made this really, really, really terrible decision. So me and the rest of the team decided the best thing to do would be to gather lots of facts and data and go to his office and say, look, it's a terrible decision. And we were convinced he would change his mind. He didn't. He went absolutely crazy. He went red in the face, banged the desk and said, I am the boss. I am paid to make decisions. That's what I do. And I remember thinking, is that right? Is that what bosses do? And as my career continued, I realized how important decisions were. They're decisions, you make decisions all the time when you're doing product design, and good products are the result of good decisions. And agile, you have to make good decisions as a team. But you know what? We're not actually shown or trained how to make decisions. So recently I started thinking about this and asking lots of people, and I want to share what I found out with you. So the first thing I did was ask about 50 different people, how are decisions made in your organisations? And quite often it was a disaster. We had these things when no one was making a decision. I called it decision vacuums, when everyone thought it was someone else's problem to make a decision about what was happening in the project or what was happening in the process. Or people had thought it was their choice to make the decision. It wasn't you, it was me. And they would have fights about it. And this is called, in English, it's called a Mexican standoff, when two people are pointing the gun at each other. And actually, I'm going to digress slightly. This got me thinking. In English, when something's really difficult to understand, we say it's all Greek. And I thought, what do you say in Greece? And actually, I found this wonderful diagram. Because apparently you say it's all Chinese. And the Chinese say it's all God. So anyway, I digress. Another thing is an abdication, when there is no governance, there's no one at the top controlling the decisions that are made. And you'll see this often, that there's an absence of a style guide or a pattern library. Thanks so much for what you said, resonated with me. But when there's this absence of governance at the top, you see things just falling apart in the design. So everyone has seen a website with mismatched buttons and fonts and crazy user journeys. This is a function of this complete lack of governance and proper decision making at the top. The other opposite of this is decision-making at the wrong level. Have you heard of hippos? And I don't mean the big scary animal from Africa. I mean the highest paid person in the organisation. So I've been in where there's a room full of hippos deciding what colour a button should be. That is when you know things are going very wrong, because they're making the wrong kind of decision at the wrong level. Or you've got macho decision-making. I heard this wonderful story. It was a friend of mine was working on a physical product, and he and the team had spent all this time analysing how much it cost to make it, what the market would bear, what the competitors were charging, and they went to do a presentation to the boss, and he walked in and went, $129. They said, don't you want to see the research? He goes, no, I don't need to. I know, $129. And it didn't go over. It wasn't a particularly successful product launch. But do you know what? Sometimes it's actually okay to make these kind of macho decisions. And when? Well, I did some research into that too, and there's a wonderful, wonderful sort of decision tree sort of process thing called the Vroom Jago model, which I think is going to be my new DJ name. The Vroom Jago model. So just to save you lots of pain and anguish of going through the decision tree, I've summarised it for you. The first one is these autocratic macho decisions. So you can make these kind of decisions when you genuinely know more, when you're confident, when the team will accept your decision, and when there's little time available. Now, I've got some stuff to say about whether you know these facts, actually. I'm going to talk about that in a moment. And the one which is consultative and collaborative is when you don't actually know that much about the situation, when you don't know much about what the problem is, when you need to get the team to buy into what you've decided, and when you have enough time to manage the group decision. So do you remember that dreadful boss I told you about? He got every one of these wrong. I think that's why we were so angry with him. So how do you know you're making the right decision? So I mentioned there that you have confidence in your abilities. Well, actually, sometimes your mind can play tricks on you. You think you're this wonderful, rational being. It's maybe the boss, it's the problem with the organisation, but you know what you're talking about. Actually, you're wrong. You are nothing but a lumbering meat robot being controlled by your unconscious. And so I'm going to tell you some unconscious biases that may impact on your decision making. The first one is anchoring. Anchoring is your mind gets fixed on the first piece of information that you're given. So I don't know if anyone's bought a used car, but it's quite a typical technique where you go to the car lot and they give you quite a high price, and then somehow you're able to negotiate the man down, and you leave thinking you've got this fantastic bargain, and in fact you've paid loads. Another thing is when you're dealing with clients. I've made the mistake. A project takes 10 days, but I want the client to be happy, and I say it'll take 7 to 10 days. And the client's actually really pissed off with me because he hears the word 7. What I should have said is it'll take around 14 days, and then they would anchor on that, and they'd think I'm some kind of hero when it's finished in 10. And in fact, last night I was reading the newspaper and I saw a wonderful and quite terrifying example of anchoring. Yale, they'd done a big voting preference study in Yale, and one of the things they looked at was American men whose wives earned more than them. So they got this huge database of these men and randomly split them in two. And the first set of men, they asked questions about what does your wife earn, and then asked about voting preference. And the second set, they asked about voting preference first, and then what your wife earns. And then the group who'd been asked about what their wife earned, they'd obviously got themselves quite worked up about this, and the impact of thinking about this first meant that they were 28% more likely to vote for Donald Trump, which I think is a terrifying decision, full stop. And then we have framing. Framing is you think about risk differently depending how it's presented to you. So I could say to you, have this operation, 9 out of 10 people survive. And you say, yeah, that sounds like a good idea, I'll go for this operation. Or you say, have this operation, you have a 10% chance of dying. That seems a lot more scary, even though you're actually talking about the same thing. And rationally, you know it's the same thing, but your mind starts thinking about things differently and judging risk differently depending on how the question is framed. You have confirmation bias. Your brain isn't big enough to take on all the data you need, and so you subconsciously cherry pick the information that you want that supports what you already think. And this is why, if you're doing user research, it's very good to try and get someone who's independent to come and help you research your designs so that you can get the real data rather than just what you want to choose that makes you think your design is already great. Then you have identity protective. What you believe about the world has such an impact on the decisions you make. There was another very interesting study, and it was from Harvard, and they couldn't understand why so many Americans kept guns in the house when so many Americans were killed by guns in the house. And they thought, maybe the Americans do know, these people just don't understand the risk. So they did research, and they discovered these people could quantify risk. They had a real, there wasn't any problem with how their rationality, they just didn't care. The data just did not form part of their decision-making because the ownership of gun was so important to who they are. So that's one, again, to watch out for. And overconfidence. Well, everybody thinks they are the best driver in the world. Obviously, not everybody is. Be very careful about overstating your confidence in your ability. And the illusion of control. People think they have more ability to change things than they actually do. Do you know the little button that you press to shut a lift door? It doesn't work. It's a placebo. It's to give you this feeling of confidence that you've got a bit of control when you're in this metal box, hurtling up and down. And so people have this illusion of control that you're going to be able to make sure this project goes right, and it's not all down to you. And the law of small numbers. Human brains get attached to very small amounts of data and then extrapolate from that. So I'm some kind of godlike boss, I've made 3 great decisions, obviously my 4th decision is going to be great. That doesn't necessarily follow. And sunk costs. I love this one. I don't know if it's the same situation in Greece, but in Britain we have all these ridiculous government IT projects that cost millions and millions and millions, and you think, why didn't they just stop? It's because humans, once you've invested in something, the idea of stopping feels like you're losing money. You can't accurately predict the consequences of continuing. It's the same as if you have tickets for a night out and you don't really want to go. Instead of just thinking, sunk cost, I don't want these tickets. You go, you have a terrible night, you buy beer, you get a cab home. You've actually ended up wasting more money than if you just ripped up the tickets and flung them away. So often you or a client will be so attached to the cost you've already sunk into a project that you'll be reluctant to abandon it. So I want to tell you how to make better decisions. First one, we've already heard again about this, the organisational structure. For a team to make good decisions, you need to have 3 voices. You need to have product or business, you need to have design, and you need to have engineering. And they all must be given equal voice and equal access as part of a combined cross-functional project team. This really helps make much better quality decisions. And there's a fantastic blog post about this from the design director of Airbnb, which I urge you to go and read. You have to make decisions at the right level. So I've summarised it like this. This is why it's wrong to have all the C-suite voting on button colours. The C-suite should be setting the strategy. We're saying we're going to go into America. The management, so at my level, we set the metrics. That's how you give the things that your team has to aim for. And setting the metrics and the KPIs and the OKRs, it's an art, because you can really change how a product is run and how it's delivered by changing what they're aiming for. And then the product team, that cross-functional product team, they decide how to build and design the thing to meet these needs. And then the customer, they're the ones who decide whether or not they're going to use it in the end. So in the product team, it's really important to avoid groupthink. And you do that by having diversity in decision-making. Ideally, you have diversity in terms of colour, age, sex, gender, everything, because that way you avoid groupthink. You avoid everyone coming to one idea and just agreeing with each other. But even just having a diversity in terms of the backgrounds and the skill set in your cross-functional team means you come to much better decisions. But make other people feel heard. We've all been in a team without sort of one loud person. Maybe you're junior, and it's very hard to get the confidence to speak. As a manager, your job should be making sure that everyone in the team is heard. There's different tools and techniques you can use for this, but it's your job to give people that voice and design with data. So you've got time, you've got 2 choices really. You can spend a lot of time arguing about opinions and shouting at each other, or you can get some real data. So that would be looking at analytics. It's your job as a designer to be aware of analytics and what's going wrong with the product that you've built. It's your job as a designer to take part in user research and think about the answers that you've seen and how you can solve the problems. And it's your job as a designer to try and push to put A/B tests out and to put different versions of your design out into the real world to see which one performs best. They do this wonderfully at Spotify. And it's also your job as a designer to try and create prototypes as soon as possible. And the purpose of a prototype is to help you ask better questions and to show the thing, because that makes it easier for people to talk. And review your decisions. Daniel Kahneman, who's a Nobel Prize-winning economic professor, he said one of the simplest thing an organisation can do to make itself better is just to think about the decisions they've made and see, well, were they good or not, and then try and learn from it. And he said most organisations have collective amnesia. Try not to do this. If you're in a Scrum team, you're having retros, think about what you've decided, how you decided it, and how you can make better decisions. But avoid this. It's another bias. So this one is when you think you're better, you're great, and everything you do is because you're great, and the other person's an idiot. An example of this is you've got a slippy, icy path, and you're walking along it, and you slip, and you think, bloody icy path. Or you see someone walking along the icy path, and they slip, and you think, what a clumsy fool. So be aware of how much responsibility you have and how much responsibility the other person has when you're reviewing decisions. Identify roles and responsibilities. This sounds really dull, but my God, it saves so much problems. And here's one technique for it, called a RACI. So you decide who's responsible, who's accountable, who's consulted, and who's informed. And even just having that simple conversation at the start of a project helps you head off lots of these problems. So how do you make people change their minds? Well, you don't do what I did and go in a gang with lots of facts and figures to shout at someone. That doesn't work. Here's some things that do work. So this is a French philosopher called Pascal, and he uses a form of Socratic inquiry. And he says, to make someone realize they're wrong, first tell them they're right. Ask them to explain why they're right. And then smile and listen and ask little questions until eventually they change their mind, but they think it was their idea. That's a bit of a ninja power. I use that in my husband all the time. Here's my gift to you, is my other ninja power, is to say something and then just stop talking. It's terrifying. People leap in, fill the silence, and talk themselves out of things. So if you've been in a situation where you find yourself talking and talking yourself out of what you already thought, someone's using that ninja superpower on you. Be careful. And the other thing you can do is just bypass the rational brain entirely and go straight to your monkey brain, straight to the emotional part. So I'm going to show you a beautiful example of this from a program called Madman. And I've chosen it because it also has a lovely Greek connection. And it's about, they're trying to pitch to a client, Kodak, and Kodak want to call this new discovery the wheel, and they want to call it the carousel. And they don't give them facts and figures, they go straight to the heart. Let me show you.
This is Joe Harriman and Lynn Taylor. No Eastmans today, unfortunately. They're all back in the lab.
It's a wonderful facility, but they don't take vacations.
What do they show? Slides of them working?
So, have you figured out a way to work the wheel into it?
We know it's hard because wheels aren't really seen as exciting technology, even though they are the original.
Well, technology is a glittering lure. But there's the rare occasion when the public can be engaged on a level beyond flash, if they have a sentimental bond with the product. My first job, I was in-house at a fur company with this old pro copywriter, Greek, named Teddy. And Teddy told me the most important idea in advertising is new. Creates an itch. You simply put your product in there as a kind of calamine lotion. But he also talked about a deeper bond with the product. Nostalgia. It's delicate, but potent. Sweetheart. Teddy told me that in Greek, nostalgia literally means the pain from an old wound. It's a twinge in your heart, far more powerful than memory alone. This device isn't a spaceship. It's a time machine. It goes backwards and forwards. It takes us to a place where we ache to go again. It's not called the wheel. It's called the carousel. It lets us travel the way a child travels. Round and around, and back home again. To a place where we know we are loved.
Good luck at your next meeting.
So that's how you change minds. You win hearts to change minds. So I'm going to tell you a little story now about how I put this into practice in my last job. We did this Project BAB. It was a crazy little experimental website for the World Cup. It was really well received. There's lots of really interesting things we learned about it. One of the things we did actually was we started with the atom of content. We talked about atom sort of pattern libraries. We applied that to content, and we thought, what does a piece of content look like as a tweet or on Facebook? And how do we extrapolate up from that to a website? And this was the result. But one of the best things that happened from this was the journalist came to us and said, my God, that CMS. It is the best CMS we've ever used. And we were like, but it's WordPress. And they were like, but it's just mind-blowingly brilliant. So we were thinking about this is just crazy. And we also discovered that there was a big strategic objective, which was newsroom efficiency. So we thought, actually, there's something here. How can we apply this learning to this strategy? And we did this research. We did ethnographic research, and we went and sat with the journalists, different types of journalists, publishing different types of stories at different times of day to try and work out just how painful it was. And as you see, it took nearly 2 hours to put up a simple gallery. This was very broken, and nobody had realised. So we started deciding to fix it. So we started thinking about like some prototypes and some ideas to give us an understanding of what the project should be. And here's our cross-functional project team. We built in user research from the very start. So everybody in the team, once a sprint, so if you were this core team, once a sprint, we had to do some user research to adjust the course. And the wider team, once every 3 sprints, had to take part in some user research. And then they would all discuss the solution together, decide the solution, test it, and then continue to iterate. And you see we had completely different types of backgrounds, and at one point we even had the CEO of the company taking part in user research, sort of embedding this as a team sport into the company. This is what it looked like before we started. As somebody said, it was designed by a madman. So in the backlog as well, I mentioned KPIs. One of the things we did is we asked people to talk about their process of getting a story online end to end. And we decided that one of the KPIs should be happiness. And that was fantastic because it meant that we could get this new product embedded in the newsroom really easily because it made the journalists happy. And it helped us define our backlog because we asked journalists, what makes you really unhappy? So you can see, and it was putting the story online. So that's what we started with. That was the first thing in the backlog. And here's what it looks like now. I'm going to just show you a little bit of this because of the pressure of time. We built it on top of Adobe, and we had lots of APIs so we could drop it out if the underlying content management system changed. So that says logging into Adobe. I wonder if I can make this go a bit faster. Is that possible? No, clearly not. Let me go back. There we go. So we just have to grin and bear it. So we designed it so that you only had to see, you only saw what was important to you at each stage of the process. Look how calming this is. There's this really simple way to get an image into your story. And then all of this stuff with metadata and tagging. Again, the back end of this was so complex, but because we had engineers involved from the start, what's shown to our end user is so simple. We also discovered that journalists tend to cut and paste from Word documents. Why stop them? And then we allowed them to really easily insert an image or an HTML embed or anything in line. I'm going to stop that there so we've got more time for questions. I'll just give you some facts about it. So it really was the best product. I think one of the best products I've been involved with in my career. And interestingly, I did not design that at all. What I did was set up the KPIs and set up the team and set up the way that they worked. And then they got on with it. And they did the most wonderful job because the conditions were right for them to do this wonderful job and to make great decisions. So then, recently, I made another fantastic decision. I've joined MOO. So I don't know if anyone's heard of MOO, but I've got a little video here just to give you a sense of the brand. Oh, that's our offices. If you're in London, come and visit. And this is our mission. And you might notice it doesn't say anything about print, it doesn't say anything about business cards, which gives you a clue to the scale of the ambition. MOO. Oh, thank you. There's more. Because one of the joys of MOO as well is it's a product and a service. It's a whole end-to-end service design, which makes it really fantastic. And we have very happy customers. Hang on a second. Yay. I love how much our customers love us. It's just a wonderful thing, working in an organisation where you just make people really happy. And this is one of our happy customers.
Hi MOO, my name's Sarah. Thank you so much for my new business cards and stickers which arrived today, looking all shiny and MOO. I wanted to express my gratitude for being such an awesome company, and I thought I'd do so through the power of Mookalele. This is called Bohemian Rhapsody. My startup was going well, but there was one thing missing when I went to networking events. My business cards really killed the vibe. People took them and then threw them away. But
Oh, bless her. So we're not just doing business. Isn't she great? We're not just about business cards anymore. It's such an exciting time to be at MOO because we're doing things like MOO Business Services. So we're doing the business cards for BuzzFeed, Uber, Airbnb, and we're also defining ourselves as a company that helps creative people reach out to their audience. So we're doing packaging and all sorts of wonderful things. And I brought presents from London. So if you want these presents, what you need to do is tweet me and tell me your best decision, your worst decision, your boss's terrible decision. And tonight at the party, I'm going to come with my haul and give it to you. And also, if you want 20% off using MOO, I've also have a present. Just put MOO Jane in at the checkouts and you will get 20% off. So thank you for having me.
Thank you, Jane.
Shall I?
I've now got Jane Austen is Scottish.
Yes.
And you just made me cry.
Oh.
Every time I see that Mad Men thing, I go.
Oh.
It's just wonderful. It's so true about
Isn't
winning
it?
hearts and minds.
Yes.
Yeah, I've watched it 20 times and I just cry every time. Fantastic, thank you. Great presentation.
Thank you.
Okay, well, so, like I say, we've got some questions and I've just got a couple for you. You talked that you lead teams.
Uh-huh.
And I was wondering, what kind of advice would you give for someone interviewing you, and what do you look for when you're picking the right people? What are the kind of do's and don'ts, I suppose?
Oh my God. Well, do you know what? Follow me in Medium. All the answers are there. I've written an article on Medium about questions you should ask when you're going for a job.
Yeah.
And one of the questions I ask because decision making is something I've been thinking about, is how do you do sign off? And there was one job I really, really wanted, and I said, well, how do you do sign off? They went, well, if Lucy likes it. And I was like, who's Lucy? Oh, some women in marketing. And but what's she got? So I thought, right, this is obviously a disastrous place to work. So I've done a blog post about that, and I've got one about do's and don'ts. Do's and don'ts, well, make sure that it's a fit. You know, as you rightly said, Vasilis, I think, are these people I want to see in the morning? And you think to yourself, is this people that I want to see in the morning? Is it really right for me? Ask really good questions, be confident and smile, and don't do what one person that I interviewed did, which was ask for the contact details of the very, very pretty girl who was helping the interview, so that you could compare portfolios with her later. Is that what you call it?
Classy. Yeah. You talked about prototypes as well.
Yes.
And I'm quite passionate about them. And also Daniel mentioned as well, like not wireframes, prototypes.
Yes.
And if you could just talk a little bit more about that, why they're so important, and how they help us get to a decision faster. As well.
Yeah. So prototypes can be. When I was at GDS, we had a mantra which was show the thing. I can describe something to you, and we've seen all these biases and all these different ways of seeing the world, but I could describe something to you and you might think I'm talking about something totally different. So as soon as you can actually show some sketches, then we have a common understanding. So that's the first thing. They help you ask better questions, because you can see you can ask people what they think about it.
Yeah.
It's a great tool for user testing. The team, the cross-functional team, can together build a prototype. And I know engineers are very attached to their code. Engineers love to build things that's reusable, and then they have to build something that's thrown away. It's quite painful for them.
Yes.
So that's why you have a sort of slightly separate team doing the prototypes.
Okay.
And then, because it's got built to be thrown away, you can do lots of user research without becoming too attached, and you iterate until the point where it has to go into the full code.
Yeah.
You can use pattern libraries to quickly assemble something and see if it works.
Yeah.
So because I work in cross-functional agile teams that work in sprints that do regular user research, what do you do your research on if not a prototype?
And it's quite a powerful thing to put in a client's hands as well, isn't it? The prototype as well.
I
to
imagine,
get their buy-in.
I've been client-side for years.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
So
Okay.
I imagine, you tell me.
Yeah. No. Well. Yes. Okay. Thank you very much. Thank you very much
Pleasure.
indeed.
Thank you.
Fantastic. Day off from everyone. Thank you.